I was having this realization the other day that completely blew my mind. And honestly, it kind of reframed how I think about everything, from my career to my personal life, just everything.
Oh, yeah? What was it?
Well, I heard this incredibly fascinating story about a man named Ronald Reed. He was a humble janitor, lived a very quiet, simple life, and passed away back in 2014. But here's the wild part. When he died, he had $8 million in savings.
Wow. 8 million.
$8 million.
Yeah.
And he didn't win the lottery. He didn't, inherit a dime. He just saved consistently and let the compounding effect work its magic over decades.
Just quietly building wealth in the background.
Exactly. But I couldn't help but contrast his life with those highly educated, high-flying Wall Street executives we always hear about. You know the ones, the guys who make millions but somehow end up completely broke and bankrupt.
Right, the ones who flame out spectacularly.
Yeah. It just begs this curious question. Why is financial success seemingly the only field in the entire world where a janitor can completely outperform a certified genius?
What's fascinating here is that we tend to treat managing wealth and really success in general like it's a hard science. We view it like physics or mathematics.
Where there's a right and wrong answer.
Exactly, where there are strict rules, formulas, objective right answers, but in reality it's a soft skill. It is almost entirely about human behavior, not raw intelligence.
I completely agree.
You can be the absolute smartest person in the room, holding multiple advanced degrees, but if you lack emotional control and self-awareness, you will sabotage yourself. It really comes down to the psychology of how we navigate the world, how we handle fear, and how we deal with our own egos.
So today we are doing a deep dive into the psychology of decision-making. We're pulling together a mountain of notes, historical observations, and human behavioral patterns to figure out why smart people sometimes make terrible choices.
It's such a crucial topic.
It is. And I want to speak directly to you, the listener, for a second. Whether you are prepping for a big meeting, building a business from the ground up, or you were just insanely curious about human psychology, understanding this is going to fundamentally reframe how you view success.
Because we're looking at the invisible forces that drive us.
Right. And honestly, it starts with something so relatable. Looking at other people's habits. I mean, how easy is it to look at a friend or even a total stranger and think, wow, they're completely crazy for spending their time or money that way?
Oh, we all do it. It's human nature to judge based on our own internal logic.
Yeah, we think our way makes the most sense.
But the deeper truth we've observed is that no one is actually crazy. We are all just operating with wildly different financial DNA.
Financial DNA, I like that.
Yeah, and it's formed by our unique life experiences. Think about the economic environment you happen to be born into. Say you were born in 1970. Your formative years, your teens and 20s, coincided with this massive, roaring stock market boom in the 90s.
Oh, the dot-com era. Everything was going up.
Exactly. Naturally, your brain is wired to be an optimistic investor. You see the market as a place of infinite opportunity. But if you were born in 1950, your 20s were spent watching a totally stagnant market that just went nowhere for a decade.
So your worldview is completely different.
Completely. The emotional imprint of that era taught you that investing is a dangerous, fruitless game.
That makes a lot of sense. You're looking at the exact same reality, but through completely different psychological lenses. I feel like we see this disconnect most clearly when looking at different income brackets.
Absolutely. Take the observation of low-income individuals who might spend hundreds of dollars a year on lottery tickets. Now, to someone who is wealthy or even middle class, that looks entirely irrational.
You look at the math, the 1 in a million odds, and say that's insane. Why not just save that money?
Right.
But I got to play devil's advocate here, though. I hear you on the differing perspectives, but mathematically, isn't buying lottery tickets still objectively a terrible strategy? How do we reconcile the cold, hard math with their emotional reality?
Because you have to step entirely into their shoes to understand the function of that purchase.
Okay.
If someone is living paycheck to paycheck, constantly stressed, with absolutely no upward mobility, they aren't looking at a math equation. They aren't trying to optimize a portfolio. They are buying a dream.
A momentary ticket out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They are buying a momentary ticket out of their reality. The psychological comfort of feeling, even for just a few days, like they have a chance at a different life, that is worth the $5 to them.
Wow.
What seems mathematically crazy to one person makes total emotional sense to another when you factor in their daily reality.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the immediate takeaway here is that we have to stop trying to copy the life or business strategies of people who are playing a completely different game than we are.
100%.
You can't just adopt a billionaire's aggressive risk profile if your ultimate goal is just to have a quiet, stable retirement. We're all running our own race with our own finish lines.
And part of running that race is acknowledging the actual terrain, which brings us to two forces we severely underestimate, mostly because they are incredibly uncomfortable to think about: luck and risk.
Oh man, this is something I've been reflecting on so much lately. How much of our success is actually earned through sheer grit, and how much is just pure, unadulterated luck?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the line between the two is razor thin. Have you ever looked into the early life of Bill Gates?
A little bit, yeah.
It is the ultimate case study of this dynamic. In 1968, he happened to attend Lakeside School in Seattle. Now, at that time, there were roughly 300 million high school-aged kids in the world, and Lakeside was one of the very few high schoolers on the entire planet that had a computer.
I hadn't thought of it that way. I knew he started early, but I didn't realize how statistically exclusive that access was.
It was a 1 in a million stroke of pure luck. Gates himself has openly admitted that without Lakeside, there would be no Microsoft.
He had the access.
Right. He was brilliant, yes, and he worked incredibly hard, but he had a massive tailwind of luck. But here is the other side of the coin, the part people rarely talk about.
What's that?
He had a close friend at that school named Kent Evans. Kent was just as brilliant, just as visionary as Gates. They were peers. But tragically, Kent died in a mountaineering accident before he even graduated high school.
Oh, wow.
That is a 1 in a million stroke of risk.
That is heartbreaking. But what a profound parallel. It really forces you to rethink how we assign credit and blame.
It does. Luck and risk are essentially siblings. They are the external forces that dictate outcomes just as much as our own effort.
Because the world is just too complex.
Exactly. The world is simply too complex for outcomes to be 100% based on merit. The lesson is that we shouldn't take all the credit when we succeed, nor should we heavily judge ourselves or others when failure happens.
Try telling that to those social media influencers.
Right.
You know the ones. They post videos from their private jets claiming their massive wealth is entirely due to them waking up at 4 a.m. and taking ice baths.
It's all about the hustle.
Right. And they completely ignore the fact that they were born into massive wealth or just happen to go viral by sheer algorithmic luck. It's this bizarre illusion of total control.
It really is an illusion, and that illusion of control feeds right into another huge psychological trap we fall into, which is the endless treadmill of envy.
The treadmill of envy.
Yeah, modern capitalism is incredibly effective at doing two things simultaneously: generating massive amounts of wealth and generating massive amounts of envy.
The modern trap of never having enough. It is so true. You see it in the workplace all the time.
Oh, constantly.
Someone gets a huge bonus, and they are thrilled, over the moon, until they find out the person at the desk next to them got slightly more. Suddenly, they are miserable. It's like their success only matters relative to someone else's success.
It's a vicious cycle that scales up indefinitely. Think about this everyday scenario. You have a highly specialized doctor making, say, $500,000 a year.
Which is great money.
By almost any global metric, that doctor is incredibly wealthy. They feel great about themselves until they decide to buy a nice vacation home in a wealthy area and they realize their neighbor is a CEO making $10 million a year.
And suddenly they feel poor.
Exactly. Suddenly, the doctor feels inadequate. But it doesn't stop there. That CEO feels totally outclassed because their childhood friend is Michael Jordan, who is worth $2 billion.
Right.
And Michael Jordan might feel poor at an exclusive party standing next to Jeff Bezos, who is sitting on $200 billion.
There is always a bigger fish.
Mm.
It never ends. But why are we wired to do this? Why do we constantly move the goalposts on our own happiness?
Because it's a historical human flaw rooted in social hierarchy. We are tribal creatures, and historically having more resources meant a higher status in the tribe, which meant survival.
Well, it kept us alive.
Yes. But when survival isn't the issue, it just becomes ego. Napoleon envied Caesar. Caesar envied Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great envied Hercules.
Who wasn't even a real person.
Exactly. He envied a myth. When you tie your self-worth to having more than the next guy, you are playing a game that mathematically cannot be won.
And it drives people to make catastrophic decisions. I mean, look at some of the most prominent cautionary tales. Brilliant, highly connected people like Bernie Madoff or Sam Bankman-Fried.
Perfect examples.
These were individuals who had achieved massive, unbelievable success. They had hundreds of millions of dollars. They had everything they could ever possibly need. But they risked everything they had and needed to get something they didn't have and didn't need.
All for status.
Just to satisfy that ego, that craving to be at the absolute top of the ladder.
This raises an important question. Why are we so driven to show off in the first place? It usually comes down to wanting respect and admiration from others. We think visible wealth equals social validation.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Because the psychology behind how we seek admiration is completely backwards.
How so?
Think about this. You are walking down the street and a roaring, bright red Ferrari pulls up to the stoplight. What is your immediate thought?
Honestly, I'm usually picturing myself behind the wheel of that car.
That's the thing. You never look at the driver and think, wow, that guy's so cool. I really admire him as a person.
Not at all.
No. You look at the car and think, if I had that car, everyone would think I was cool. It is a psychological trick our brains play on us. We buy expensive things, assuming they will earn us the respect of others. But people don't use your wealth to admire you. They use your wealth as a benchmark for their own desires.
That is a profound distinction, and it highlights the massive difference between being rich and being wealthy.
Aren't those the same thing?
We often use those words interchangeably, but they represent entirely different lifestyles. Being rich is highly visible. It's your current income, it's the new Lamborghini, it's the designer clothes, it's loud.
Okay.
But true wealth is hidden.
Wait, so you're saying all the stuff I'm not buying is my actual wealth?
Precisely. Wealth is the money you didn't spend. It's the cars you didn't purchase, the first-class upgrades you declined, the expensive watches you left in the store.
It's what you don't see.
Yes. Wealth is options, flexibility, and security, all of which are invisible to the naked eye. When you see someone driving a $100,000 car, the only data point you actually know about their wealth is that they have $100,000 less than they did before they bought the car.
That is wild to think about. That essentially means my savings account isn't just a pile of money. It's actually just a scoreboard for my discipline.
That's a great way to put it.
It's the gap between my ego and my income. If my ego rises at the exact same rate as my paycheck, I will never actually build well. I'll just have nicer stuff and the exact same amount of financial stress.
And managing that stress brings us to the actual cost of success. Everything in life has a price, but the price of financial freedom or building a great career isn't always written on a price tag.
Yeah, I've noticed how often people try to get something for nothing in life. The second there is a setback, or the market dips, or their business hits a rough patch, they completely panic.
They want the reward without the struggle.
Exactly. They want the massive reward without enduring any of the struggle.
I like to use a simple analogy for this. Imagine you want a car. You really have three options. Option one, you can buy it new, which means paying a high price for a premium experience.
Sure.
Option two, you can buy it used, paying a lower price but accepting lower quality or more maintenance. Or option three, you can try to steal it.
I wouldn't recommend option 3.
Right. Most rational people know that stealing the car is a terrible idea because the consequences are severe. But when it comes to investing or building a career, people constantly try to steal the car.
They try to cheat the system.
They try to time the market, jumping in and out to avoid any losses, essentially trying to get the massive gains without paying the toll.
And what is that toll? What is the actual price we have to pay if we want to build lasting success?
The fee is emotional. It is the stress, the doubt, and the intense volatility. Let's talk about Netflix for a second.
Okay.
Between 2002 and 2018, it grew into an absolute behemoth, making early investors incredibly wealthy. But during that climb, there were moments where the stock dropped by 80%.
80%.
Think about your own portfolio right now. Imagine watching 80% of your life savings vanish in a few months. That anxiety, that sick feeling in the pit of your stomach, that is not a fine for making a bad decision. That is the fee of admission for long-term success. You have to be willing to pay it.
That reframes so much. We view struggle as a sign we did something wrong, when really it's just the cost of doing business. And the ultimate reward for paying that emotional fee over a long period is compounding.
Compounding is magic.
The math on this is just mind-bending to me. Take Warren Buffett. The man is worth well over $84 billion. But over $81 billion of that came after his 65th birthday.
It's staggering. But the reason our brains struggle to comprehend compounding is that we are wired to think linearly, not exponentially.
What do you mean?
If I ask you to add 8 plus 8 plus 8, you can do it easily. But if I ask you to multiply 8 times 8 times 8 times 8, your brain breaks. Buffett's secret isn't just that he is a great investor, it's that he started investing when he was 10 years old.
He gave it time.
He gave exponential growth time to work. Compare him to someone like Jim Simons, a brilliant hedge fund manager who actually achieved much higher annual returns than Buffett.
So he was technically better at it.
Simons was arguably a better investor by the percentages, but Simons didn't find his stride until he was 50. Because he started so much later, he accumulated a fraction of Buffett's total wealth. Time does the heavy lifting. You don't have to be the smartest, you just have to be incredibly patient.
But patience is so incredibly hard when it constantly feels like the sky is falling. Which makes me wonder, why are we so drawn to bad news? Why does the pessimist always sound like a brilliant genius trying to protect us, while the optimist sounds dangerously naive?
It's a deeply ingrained evolutionary trap. Think about our ancestors foraging in the wild. The organism that treats threats as more urgent than opportunities is the one that survives to pass on its genes.
Better safe than sorry.
Exactly. If you ignore a rustle in the bushes that turns out to be a tiger, you die. If you ignore an apple on a tree, you just miss a snack. We are biologically wired to pay attention to pessimism because pessimism kept us alive.
That makes a lot of sense.
Plus, the nature of how events unfold reinforces this bias. Setbacks happen incredibly fast. A stock market can crash in a single afternoon. A natural disaster wipes out a city in hours.
It's sudden.
That speed makes destruction dramatic and highly visible. But progress is agonizingly slow. Medicine slowly extending life expectancy by a few years over the course of decades doesn't make breaking news, but it completely changes the world.
It feels like we're constantly bracing for impact.
Yeah.
If human nature is just hardwired to look for the next disaster, how do we ever actually build anything substantial? If failure is so common and visible, what's the mechanism for real, massive success?
That brings us to one of the most misunderstood concepts in life and business. It's something called a tail event.
A tail event.
The idea is that you can fail 99% of the time and that 1% success completely covers your losses and then some. What's fascinating here is how universal this concept is across entirely different fields.
Give me an example.
Take the art world. There was a legendary art dealer named Heinz Berggruen. He amassed an unbelievable fortune in art. People thought he had a magical eye for spotting masterpieces.
But he didn't.
The reality, he bought thousands and thousands of paintings. The vast majority of them were completely useless, worth next to nothing. But he became a legend because maybe 1% of the paintings he bought were by Picasso or Matisse.
A lot.
The tiny handful of massive winners completely covered the thousands of losers.
That makes me think of Amazon. Everyone knows Amazon's a juggernaut today, but do you remember the Amazon Fire Phone? It was a massive, humiliating failure that cost the company hundreds of millions of dollars. But it didn't matter in the long run. Why? Because around the same time, they launched Amazon Prime and Amazon Web Services.
Huge tail events.
Those were massive. The astronomical success of AWS completely buried the failure of the Fire Phone. In life, you don't need to be right all the time. You just need to survive long enough to catch a few of those massive tail events.
Exactly. You just need to stay in the game and absorb the bumps along the way, which really forces us to define what the game actually is and what winning looks like.
So what does this all mean? When we talk about navigating our financial DNA, ignoring the urge to impress the neighbor, enduring the emotional volatility of growth, and letting compounding work, what is the ultimate point of accumulating wealth? Is it really just to have the highest score?
I think the most beautiful and accurate answer is this. The highest dividend that money pays is not a luxury item. It's not a bigger house or a nicer car. The highest dividend is the control of your time.
Control your time.
True wealth is waking up every single morning and being able to look in the mirror and say, I can do whatever I want with whoever I want for as long as I want.
That's the dream.
It is the freedom to dictate your own life. Sociological studies consistently show that having a strong sense of control over your schedule and your autonomy is the most dependable predictor of happiness, far more than the size of your salary.
That is so powerful. Control over your time. It brings everything full circle back to Ronald Read, the janitor who just quietly bought his own freedom.
He certainly did.
But I want to leave you, the listener, with one final provocative thought to mull over. Psychologists talk about something called the end of history illusion.
This is a great concept.
It's this weird blind spot we all have about our own personal development. If you look back at yourself 10 years ago, you clearly recognize how much you've changed. Your tastes, your goals, your entire personality.
Night and day difference.
But for some reason, we all foolishly assume that who we are today is the finished product. We assume we won't change much in the next 10 years.
And we absolutely will. The person you are in a decade will have different desires and different needs.
We will. So the question you have to ask yourself is this. Are you building a life and a financial strategy with enough moderation and flexibility to accommodate the person you are going to become? If you lock yourself into extreme choices today, chasing a very specific version of success, you might just be building a cage for the person you'll be tomorrow.
It's about leaving room for error and leaving room for growth. True flexibility is the ultimate wealth.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. See you in the next episode.